In this video, I have a neat little trick to change the way that you think about dynamics that's going to massively improve your musicality. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at quickstartclarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. So to get started, let me kind of demonstrate the normal way that I think most people think about dynamics, and it makes sense because it's the way we're taught how dynamics work. So if we look at this example, this is Summer Dreams from Dr. Kristen Denny Chambers' Finger Fitness Etudes Book 2. Love that book, by the way. You should absolutely check that out at Clarinet Playground if you aren't familiar with her music. This one is in her free sample catalog as well, which you can check out and get a bunch of different etudes and exercises and lots of great stuff to work on. For this one, when we look at the dynamics, what we normally are taught are, okay, it's piano, so we start soft, then we crescendo, which means gradually get louder, and we get louder to maybe mezzo piano, mezzo forte, somewhere around there. We hold that, and then we get to the diminuendo, and that means get softer. So I'll play that first phrase or so, following those dynamics very literally and very to the T, interpreting them the way that I just described, where it's following the directions of the dynamics. And that sounds like this. That's okay. It sounds nice. There was certainly dynamic contrast, and if you're always thinking about that or hear the very common advice that we need more dynamic contrast, that was quite a lot of dynamic contrast, and it clearly got louder when it crescendoed, and it clearly got softer when it diminuendoed, but it didn't sound all that musical. Let me try playing it again with my kind of different idea of how to approach dynamics and see what you think about that. Now that certainly sounds at least a lot more musical to me, and actually I think if we looked at maybe a decibel reading of it and got really particular about it, I think that might have been less overall dynamic contrast than the first way, yet it sounded more musical. And that's because of this subtle shift to how I'm sort of thinking about the dynamics that makes the difference between just kind of robotically doing the dynamics and doing the instructions on the page versus actually doing it musically. So what is this musical version and how should you be thinking about your dynamics? It's the idea that music always has shape to it. You don't add shape just when there's a crescendo or a diminuendo, and in this particular example there's actually a lot of dynamics for us, so you can almost get away with doing that, but in other music there's very, very little crescendo and diminuendo and actual dynamic markings on the page. So does that mean that it just doesn't have any shape and is more stagnant? Most of the time not, sometimes, but most of the time it doesn't. What we should be doing is always playing with shape and always playing with direction, and then use those dynamics that are marked as by the composer as guidance on the shape that you should be giving it. So for example, if we look at measure 6 here, where we have the end of measure 6, F, G, A, those three notes leading into the downbeat of measure 7, because that's going up in pitch, I might naturally give it a little bit of shape of a little crescendo there. However, there's a diminuendo there actually, so that changes the interpretation. So the dynamic is there to guide the shape that I'm giving it, but if that dynamic wasn't there, I'd still be giving it a shape. It might be a different shape than what's written, and that's why it's nice to have instructions from the composer to have ideas of where they want you to take the line, but that's how we should be thinking of dynamics. Not as an instruction for something to be doing to add to the music, it should be guidance on the shape that we're already giving the music. So hopefully that gives you a subtle perspective shift on your dynamics, and I highly encourage you to always, always, always be playing with direction and use the dynamics to guide you. There's one other way that this can make a really big difference, and it's in the kind of macro versus micro phrasing. So the first version that I played was very much just following the macro phrasing of the dynamics on the page. I tried to get gradually louder and louder and louder over the first full measure, and then sustain it for the first half of the second measure, and then gradually softer and softer and softer through the second measure. But instead of doing that the second time, that was more musical, I did that overall on the sort of macro level, but on the micro level, I still had direction in the shape of the line. So when we have this ba-da-dim, ba-da-dum, that still has kind of a direction to it of starting from a low point and going up a little bit. Ti-da-dum, ti-da-dum. So I played a little bit louder on the higher notes, a little bit softer on the lower notes, following just kind of the general direction of things. And because the notes are going up in each of those groupings, it lent itself very well to the macro crescendo that was happening. But there was a little bit more micro phrasing in there as well, rather than only being sort of a slave to the macro crescendo that was written. So that's also why this is going to give you much more musicality, because everything has direction, everything has grouping, everything has forward momentum to it, and you have the guidance of the composer to tell you overall if you should be getting louder or softer, or playing soft in general, to sort of guide you. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the Quick Start Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return, where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.